Welcome to Midnight Index. I need to tell you about this story that haunted me, growing up in Columbus, Ohio. Brian Shaffer's disappearance isn't just another missing person story, it's a mystery that shook Columbus, Ohio, especially for those of us who grew up around here. I was living in Columbus when it happened, and the way Brian seemingly vanished into thin air from a popular campus bar left the entire community stunned and deeply unsettled. Even today, just mentioning his name sparks heated debates, theories, and countless sleepless nights for everyone who remembers that chilling spring of 2006. Now, let's get into this file. 1. Who was Brian Shaffer? Brian Shaffer was born on February 25, 1979, and grew up in Pickerington, Ohio. He wasn't your average guy. Smart, charismatic, and ambitious, Brian earned his microbiology degree before entering medical school at Ohio State University. By 2006, he was a second-year medical student with a bright future ahead. Friends describe him as fun-loving, driven, and always up for an adventure. But Brian's life wasn't without hardship. Just weeks before he disappeared, he lost his mom, Renee, to cancer, a devastating blow he was still grieving at the time of his disappearance. Despite this tragedy, friends and family believed he was coping, focused on his studies and his serious relationship with girlfriend Alexis Wagoner. In fact, the pair planned a spring break trip to Miami, a chance for Brian to recharge after a difficult few months. No one expected that trip would never happen. Now let's dive into the night that changed everything. 2. On the evening of Friday, March 31, 2006, Brian met his dad, Randy, at an Outback steakhouse. They celebrated Brian making it through another stressful round of medical exams. Around 9 p.m., Brian met up with his friend Clint Florence at the Ugly Tuna Saloon bar near Ohio State's South Campus Gateway. They were soon joined by Clint's friend, Meredith Reed. The three hit several bars around the area, celebrating the start of spring break. By 1:15 a.m., they returned to the Ugly Tuna, where security cameras captured Brian, happy and relaxed, interacting with people around him. Around 1:55 a.m., Brian was spotted outside the bar's entrance talking casually with two women before heading back inside. What makes this footage chillingly significant? It would be the last confirmed sighting of Brian Shaffer alive. After that, things took a strange turn. When the bar closed at 2 a.m., Clint and Meredith waited outside, expecting Brian any second, but he never came out. They assumed he might have headed home early. Yet, when Brian didn't show up for his Miami trip or respond to any messages, panic set in, leading to an official missing person report. The footage at Ugly Tuna was scoured, showing everyone else leaving, except Brian. Somehow, he had disappeared from inside a bar with only one public entrance and exit. It seemed impossible. No one simply vanishes from a crowded bar, especially someone like Brian. 3. Once Brian was reported missing, Columbus police jumped into action, but they quickly realized this wasn't a typical disappearance. Reviewing hours of surveillance footage showed everyone leaving the Ugly Tuna Saloon, except Brian. The single public exit was under constant camera surveillance, making it baffling how he could have left undetected. Investigators even examined backdoor routes, especially an emergency exit leading directly to a construction zone behind the bar. They brought in search dogs, deployed divers into nearby rivers, scoured dumpsters, sewers, and local construction areas, but nothing turned up. Authorities carefully reviewed Brian's financial records, social media, and phone activity, all revealing absolutely no clues. His phone pinged once more on April 1, in the area around Ugly Tuna, but it remained inactive afterward. This lack of evidence was puzzling. No footprints, no dropped belongings, no witnesses who saw him leave through an alternate exit. The more investigators looked, the stranger the situation seemed. Adding complexity, the reliability of witnesses became an immediate issue. Many patrons from the bar that night had consumed alcohol, making their recollections vague and inconsistent. Even Brian's friend, Clint Florence, became an early point of suspicion after refusing a polygraph test. Clint insisted he knew nothing and felt the test unnecessary, but the police and public wondered why he wouldn't fully cooperate. Still, without concrete evidence or credible witness accounts, law enforcement couldn't officially consider anyone a suspect. Investigators found themselves stuck, grappling with surveillance footage gaps, eyewitness contradictions, and frustrating dead ends at every turn. But what truly baffled authorities, and keeps this case infamous, was the sheer impossibility of Brian leaving unnoticed. A theory emerged suggesting he could have used an emergency exit into a construction area behind the bar, potentially stumbling into an accidental death scenario. Yet police and search teams extensively combed through that very area, finding absolutely nothing. Brian's complete lack of any physical trace sparked numerous theories, each seeming plausible at first glance, but quickly falling apart under scrutiny. Part 4. As days turned into weeks, multiple theories about Brian's disappearance emerged, each capturing public imagination differently. The most debated theory was that Brian intentionally disappeared. Supporters of this theory argued that grief over his mother's recent death may have triggered a desire to escape his life completely. Proponents highlighted his heavy workload, the pressures of medical school, and possibly overwhelming personal grief. However, skeptics noted that Brian had planned future activities, including that Miami vacation with his girlfriend, and had shown no signs of wanting to abandon his life. Moreover, there were no financial withdrawals or indications he'd prepared to vanish intentionally. The scenario, while emotionally understandable, lacked critical logistical backing. Another heavily discussed theory involved a tragic accident. Investigators speculated Brian might have exited through the back, an emergency door opening to a hazardous construction area behind Ugly Tuna. Perhaps, inebriated and disoriented, he stumbled into a dangerous spot, becoming trapped or injured fatally. It sounded plausible initially. Construction sites do have their hazards. Yet extensive searches, including dogs, dive teams, and construction crews, repeatedly yielded nothing. It seems improbable, if not outright impossible, that extensive search efforts wouldn't uncover a single shred of evidence if an accident had occurred right outside the bar. Foul play quickly became another significant theory. Was Brian targeted? Could someone have harmed him? Given the lack of evidence and suspicious circumstances, particularly Clint's reluctance for further questioning, many began speculating. Yet, law enforcement found no indication of violence, struggle, or conflict on the footage or within the bar. Also, given the busy setting, a violent altercation seemed implausible without any witness accounts or physical clues. Harming and then removing Brian from such a populated place without detection seemed far-fetched, challenging the logic behind this theory. Finally, some theorized suicide might explain Brian's disappearance, suggesting emotional turmoil from his mother's passing. But people closest to Brian vehemently disagreed. He had grief. Certainly. But exhibited none of the telltale behaviors associated with suicidal ideation. Brian remained socially engaged, academically driven, and actively planned future events with enthusiasm. Again, the absence of physical evidence and thorough investigation efforts failed to support this explanation. There was no indication Brian intended self-harm, no goodbye note, no financial moves that usually accompany such cases, making this theory also difficult to accept fully. Despite these extensive investigations, theories remained just theories, and Brian Shaffer's disappearance remained as bewildering as it was the night it happened. As months turned into years, investigators faced a frustrating standstill, but several intriguing leads emerged, offering glimmers of hope, albeit briefly. In September 2008, Brian's father, Randy Shaffer, tragically died in a freak accident during a heavy storm when a tree limb fell onto him. This devastating event sparked renewed public interest when an online condolence post signed, "To Dad, Love Brian, U.S. Virgin Islands," appeared in an obituary guestbook. Authorities traced this tantalizing message back to a cruel hoax. Originating from a publicly accessible computer in Franklin County, Ohio, while the message gave momentary hope to those following the case, it ultimately led nowhere. Another brief resurgence occurred years later in 2020 when a viral social media post claimed a homeless man spotted in Tijuana, Mexico, strongly resembled Brian. The photograph showed a disheveled individual who bore a striking resemblance to Brian's age-progressed images. Public excitement soared, speculation reignited, and authorities, including the FBI, immediately investigated. However, through facial recognition analysis and family confirmation, this promising lead quickly fizzled out when the individual in question was confirmed not to be Brian. These false hopes, while briefly energizing the investigation, sadly yielded no meaningful breakthroughs. Over the years, law enforcement agencies have periodically revisited the case, often driven by community pressure and public curiosity. They've applied cutting-edge forensic technology, including age-progressed imagery and facial recognition software, hoping someone, somewhere might recognize Brian. However, none of these efforts have provided definitive leads. Authorities even reanalyzed the surveillance footage using enhanced digital forensic techniques, desperately hoping something new might surface, but nothing did. Each promising clue only deepened the mystery and reinforced the frustration felt by investigators, Brian's family, and the community. Tide 6. Brian Shaffer's disappearance sparked significant debate, becoming almost legendary within Columbus and beyond. True crime enthusiasts, internet sleuths, and amateur detectives delved into every conceivable angle, creating a rich tapestry of theories and discussions online. But this case also highlighted broader issues about the limitations of surveillance, eyewitness reliability, and investigative techniques in missing person cases. The ugly tuna saloon's security system is central to this discussion. Despite appearing thorough, the system had frustrating blind spots. It primarily covered the main entrance, but secondary exits and emergency doors leading to construction areas were only partially visible or not surveilled at all. Critics argue that bars and establishments, particularly those catering to college crowds, should enforce more comprehensive surveillance measures to prevent incidents like Brian's mysterious disappearance. In fact, the ugly tuna's inadequacies became infamous, fueling public debates about establishment safety standards and accountability. Public criticism also targeted law enforcement's initial handling of the investigation. Many wondered if crucial evidence was overlooked or mishandled in the early days, suggesting police might have underestimated the complexity of the case. For instance, critics question whether the early focus on the bar and nearby construction area overshadowed other vital investigative angles. Law enforcement officials staunchly defended their response, citing exhaustive searches, rigorous interviews, and extensive resource allocation. Still, this back and forth raises broader questions about how missing person cases involving adults are prioritized and managed, particularly under circumstances that seem to defy logic or explanation. Brian's disappearance also spurred important discussions about eyewitness reliability, particularly when alcohol is involved. Witness accounts from that evening conflicted considerably, hampered by alcohol consumption, dim lighting, crowded environments, and the passage of time. Brian's disappearance highlights just how flawed eyewitness accounts can be, often leading to confusion rather than clarity. Witnesses' conflicting stories underscore the limitations of human memory, especially in complex, crowded social settings where attention and accuracy easily become compromised. 7. In the years following Brian Shaffer's disappearance, the actions and current whereabouts of his close friend, Clint Florence, have been subjects of significant interest and speculation. Clint was among the last people to see Brian on the night he vanished, making his cooperation with the investigation crucial. Initially, Clint assisted law enforcement by providing his account of the evening's events. However, when authorities requested that he take a polygraph test, a tool often used to assess the veracity of witnesses' statements, Clint declined. This refusal was made on the advice of his attorney, Neil Rosenberg, who stated that Clint had been forthcoming and had nothing more to add. Rosenberg emphasized that Clint's decision was not an indication of deceit but rather a legal precaution. Despite this, Clint's refusal fueled public suspicion, with some believing he might be withholding information. It's important to note that polygraph tests are not infallible and are generally inadmissible in court due to their questionable reliability. Therefore, declining such a test does not inherently imply guilt or knowledge of wrongdoing. As of the latest available information, Clint Florence pursued a career in academia and research. He completed his doctoral studies and has been associated with Vanderbilt University Medical School as a postdoctoral fellow in the Department of Microbiology and Immunology. His current position and activities remain private, as he has chosen to maintain a low public profile since the events surrounding Brian's disappearance. 8. Alexis Wagoner, Brian Shaffer's girlfriend at the time of his disappearance, faced immense emotional turmoil following the incident. The couple had been dating seriously, and there was speculation that Brian intended to propose during their upcoming trip to Miami. In the immediate aftermath, Alexis was proactive in the search efforts, consistently reaching out to Brian's phone and participating in public appeals for information. Despite the profound personal loss, Alexis demonstrated remarkable resilience. She continued her medical studies at Ohio State University, graduating on schedule in 2008. Her commitment to her career and personal healing allowed her to navigate the challenges posed by Brian's unexplained absence. In the years that followed, Alexis found the strength to move forward. She married, started a family, and established herself professionally. As of the latest reports, she practices as an obstetrician-gynecologist in the Toledo area. Alexis's journey underscores her ability to balance the enduring impact of past events with the pursuit of personal and professional fulfillment. 9. As of the latest available information, Brian Shaffer's immediate family consists of his younger brother, Derek Shaffer. The Shaffer family has endured profound tragedies over the years. Brian's mother, Renee Shaffer, passed away in March 2006 after battling myelodysplasia, a rare form of cancer. This loss deeply affected Brian, occurring just weeks before his own disappearance. 2 years later, in September 2008, their father, Randy Shaffer, died in a tragic accident during a windstorm when a tree limb struck him. These successive losses left Derek as the sole surviving immediate family member. Following these events, Derek has largely maintained a private life, stepping away from public attention and the ongoing search efforts for Brian. Friends have noted that the compounded grief and the overwhelming nature of the situation have led him to seek distance from the public eye. 10. Over the years, online communities, particularly on Reddit, have actively engaged in discussions and theories regarding Brian Shaffer's disappearance. Users have proposed various scenarios, reflecting the enduring intrigue surrounding the case. One prevalent theory suggests that Brian left the bar undetected, possibly through an alternative exit, and encountered foul play afterward. Some believe he might have fallen victim to a robbery gone wrong or a hit-and-run incident, with his body subsequently concealed. Another perspective considers the possibility of Brian choosing to disappear voluntarily, influenced by the recent loss of his mother and academic pressures. However, many find this unlikely, citing his upcoming plans with his girlfriend and lack of preparatory actions. Additionally, discussions have addressed the limitations of surveillance footage from that night, noting that not all exits were adequately monitored, leaving room for speculation about his unseen departure. Despite extensive debates and analyses, no definitive evidence has emerged from these discussions, and Brian Shaffer's fate remains an enduring mystery. That wraps up this story tonight. Brian Shaffer's disappearance is one of those stories that sticks with you, especially for someone like me, who grew up in Columbus, Ohio, where this mystery unfolded. Even after all these years, I still find myself thinking about Brian, wondering what happened that spring night in 2006. The uncertainty, the unanswered questions, and the strange details continue to haunt not just me, but our entire community. If anyone watching has clues or information that might help finally solve this mystery and bring peace to those who cared for Brian, you can contact Central Ohio Crime Stoppers at 614-461-8477, or the Columbus Police Department at 614-645-4545. Thanks for joining me in revisiting this puzzling and enduring mystery. If you enjoyed this content, consider liking and subscribing. Thanks.